Hi friends, welcome to Growing as Grown-Ups, where we believe each of us has the opportunity to keep growing in ways that can fundamentally improve our life effectiveness, our leadership influence, and our well-being. Through interviews, stories, and practical principles, we explore how you can accelerate your growth and unlock your potential to make the difference you want to make. And now, your hosts from the Leaders Lyceum, Dr. Sarah Musgrove and Dr. Keith Eigel.
Welcome back, everybody, to Growing as Grown-Ups. Sarah, good to see you. I'm so excited about today's interview with Christi.
Yes, me too. Christi Gordy is the executive director and founder of Canopy Life Academy, and she has such a cool story of what she has envisioned and built over in Kenya, and she's going to tell you a little bit about her journey over there and some of the obstacles she's faced. But I think I just want to give a little context for what she's doing in Kenya to make it clear, like she downplays a lot of what she's doing. She has built a school for kids from rural communities outside of Kenya. They started with 12 students in fourth grade. They now have 39 students that span from fourth grade to eighth grade. They have 3 staff here in the United States, 13 staff over in Kenya. And one thing that's so cool is that she's been committed to staffing it with Kenyans so that it is built in line with what's going to help make a difference in Kenya. And really the intent of the school is to break the cycle of poverty and unemployment in Kenya, because it's staggering to know that less than 50% of students in Kenya even make it to high school. Most of them have to drop out to start working to support their families. And then even those that make it to high school, a smaller number make it to college. And even when they can graduate from college, there is a 42% unemployment rate in Kenya. So jobs are scarce, and their education system is just maintaining the status quo. And so Christi's come in and said, we've got to break this cycle of poverty. I want to raise up a generation of leaders who know how to solve problems, lead with integrity, are committed to their families. And so they have built this school to teach these skills that are just not a part of the traditional Kenyan education. And so it's such a great a mission that they have. And I just want to read you one thing that I think really captures what they're doing. She wrote, Kenya needs innovative leaders rooted in the community level to blaze a new trail and lead out of poverty. Leaders who are emotionally healthy, spiritually grounded, business savvy, with a problem-solving mindset. And so it has been a huge undertaking. And over the last 5 years, she has had some great wins and some big challenges. And she's going to tell us a few stories along of their journey.
I cannot wait. Let's jump in and hear the interview. We'll see y'all in a bit.
Christi Gordy, welcome to the Growing as Grown-Ups podcast. I'm so excited to have you on with us today. I've told the listeners a little bit about you, but if you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about Canopy Life, that would be awesome.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to be on this podcast, to be talking with you. I'm so grateful for your influence in this story, and also Leaders Lyceum. I've just been really grateful. Canopy Life Academy is a boarding school in Kenya that has a mission of empowering vulnerable children from rural communities to become innovative, godly entrepreneurs. Our hope is that they will learn the skills needed to go back to their communities as leaders who can bring businesses and solutions and lead their communities out of poverty. I am the founder and executive director. I mostly stay in Atlanta doing partnership, building, fundraising, and some program work from this side. I travel to Kenya 4 or 5 times a year in order to visit the kids and connect with the staff and the programming. And I live here in Atlanta with my husband, Joe, and my dog, Fitz.
Awesome. Well, it's such a great school. We'll definitely give our listeners links to that in the show notes and on our website. As you know, we are in a series on challenges and how it is the challenging things in life that grow us, whether we choose them or they choose us. And so I would love it if you would be willing to share with us a story of something from your past that proved to be a challenge that ended up shaping you. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, we launched Canopy Life in January 2015. We were in a little rented facility in Nairobi, Kenya, and only about 2 years in, our organization hit a critical barrier. We were forced to alter our programming. It's a long story. I won't go into it on this podcast, but it had a lot to do with corruption and just the lack of infrastructure and how that can impact people trying to do something different. But we were forced to alter our programming immediately for the safety of our students, sending them to live and learn at a different boarding school. Our teachers were still engaging and nurturing them, but in essence, we were not running our unique programming for what turned out to be 18 months. And it was by far the biggest professional challenge that I've ever had to engage, and also one of the biggest personal growth seasons because of a professional challenge. Of course, I've had things in my personal life that I would rank equal to or higher on this list.
Sure.
But as far as being a leader is concerned, this was definitely the most pivotal season and the hardest thing I've ever had to go through.
So if you can put yourself back in your shoes from 2017, how were you experiencing the event at the time? What was really hard and challenging about it?
Well, I definitely felt like it was a sense of paralysis. I don't know how else to explain it. It was like waking up every morning and pushing against an immovable object. I remember regularly having this visual that it was like we were heading down this path organizationally, and then this huge boulder fell in the path, and there was no way we had the strength to move it, or didn't feel like we could, but we still had to wake up every morning and lean our way into that boulder just to build the muscle that it was going to take to go over it eventually. It was an act of a huge amount of faith, like crisis of faith, and also faith building. It was it was just one of those things where emotionally and crisis management wise, when it comes to an organization, I had just never encountered anything of that magnitude. And so there was a bit of a paralysis that I had to fight through every day to keep pushing. Professionally, it was challenging, especially in the decision making. Kenya is a difficult place to get decisionable information. I mean, we just due to the cross-cultural aspect, due to the way communication flows, we were very small. In 2017, we were only 2 years old, barely, as an organization.
Yeah.
We had limited funds, and that meant limited options and zero margin for error. And we had a fairly young donor base. As a nonprofit, your entire success and stability is dependent on your donor base, but our donor base was very young. So we weren't sure if they were going to stick with us through this impediment, or if they were looking for an organization that was going to create quick results. And so that created a lot of difficulties in making the right decision, if there even was such a thing. And personally, I was experiencing such extreme, I would call it shame and insecurity. I am an INFJ on the Myers-Briggs. I'm sure everyone on the listening has probably been familiar with that, but I'm a feeling decision maker. I was feeling everything. Every day held a dozen decisions that had to pass through my gut or my instinct, and it was exhausting. Even when I made the right decision, I had no proof to know if I had made the right decision, and I was just riddled with self-doubt and shame. Should I have seen this coming? Do others see me as a failure? Am I being truthful to myself or others? By casting vision of where we're trying to go, am I being inauthentic about where we are right now? But I needed to cast vision, and will we make it through? It was just a incredibly emotional paralysis that we had to wake up and act and move through every day.
Yeah, gosh. So it sounds like it was a season with a lot of unpredictability, a lot of unknowns, a lot of obstacles bigger than you could have possibly anticipated. And you take that and combine it with the insecurity and lack of confidence that you had in yourself as a leader, top that with just a dose of shame of what am I doing? Right? Like that is a lot. And so, now from the perspective of where you are 3 years later, having survived that season, can you identify what it was? I mean, I think you kind of already did. The shame and the lack of confidence was probably contributing to the paralysis, but
Right.
can you identify what it took in terms of growth from you in order to get through that season?
Absolutely. I mean, there was more than just the shame. I was also experiencing burnout because 2.5 years into a nonprofit, you're pretty much already running on flames. But I was holding myself back by my need for creative control and a desire for perfection. I had a creative disillusionment already at that point that was wearing me out. At my core, I'm a visionary trying to create, or a creative, I guess, trying to create something beautiful and life-giving in another culture. And my idealistic nature, which can be my strength, was playing against me because it was really struggling with the idea that all creative work is hard. And I gave into complaining, which is death to the creative process. And one of the books I read, Elizabeth Gilbert wrote Big Magic. And this isn't a direct quote, but it's going to be my parenthetical, is that basically all creative work is hard. So there's no point in complaining about it. Complaining only scares away the inspiration that you need to move through it. And then the shame was compounded because I was comparing myself to other leaders who are not feelers, aggressive leaders who can put aside their emotions to get stuff done. And I thought that was my weakness. And I think one of the ways I was able to move through it is that I had to put aside the idea that, and the shame, that I was never going to be tough. I'm not, as a feeler, I'm very strong, but I'm not tough. And I had to embrace that feeling passionate, tender self was my superpower, not my weakness. And I had to learn to draw from the toughness of others, the intellect of others, to push through hard decisions that didn't ever resonate in my gut. I had to learn resilience, some equanimity in my emotions, just when to not let it, practices even to not let those negative emotions get to you. And I had to learn to let go, to trust others to do the work, even if it's not the way I would have done it. I'm not a perfectionist in that kind of sense, but I am a idealist in that I want there to be a perfect value at the base of every journey. And different people have different values. And so you have to trust that they can contribute their value, even if it's different from yours, to still achieve a positive end goal. And I had to learn to communicate as best as I could my values and expectations so that we could unify under that leadership and vision. I think also, and I don't know if this will be applicable to all of your listeners, but I had to do a deep dive in my faith and my trust that what I was doing had a purpose, and the sense of calling that started it for me was worth persevering through and drawing strength from a place outside of myself. And for me, that was in, my faith. And it took all of that and a heap of encouragement and support from other people, to push through and to grow as a person through that disillusionment, that shame, and my sense of creative control or idealism, to be a healthy person on the other side.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I walked some of that journey with you, and
you did.
it was a season of you wrestling and really learning who you are as a leader and as a woman, as an executive director, as a boss, all those different things. And I think hearing you explain it right now, like it really is, as we talk about it at the Lyceum in terms of developmental transitions, right? You're at that stage in life, like me, where we are moving fully into ownership over who we are, right?
Yes.
And that comparison of, I think I know who I am, but I'm not doing it the way that other people are. And is that wrong? And what are other people going to think of me, is still hanging on, right? That I think about as like this, like ball and chain hanging on my ankle, holding me back from really embracing the type of leader that I am, the personality traits, the values that I bring, your ability to be creative and visionary and whimsical, and all those things are uniquely you, but aren't what you're going to see in the executive director of a different organization.
Right.
And so this season was tough for you, but to see you wrestling in all the things you just described, is you learning to see yourself as you are, and not as much as how you see other people or how you wish other people were to see you. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. I'm a big visual person. So like, as you're talking, it's very true to the visual image that the challenge when you're in a hard time is that everyone has advice for you and you want to take that advice. You need that advice. You need that help. But if you have someone that tackles a problem like a linebacker and you are a ninja acrobat, right? Like you don't have the brawn and aggression, then you often, if you don't know yourself, which let's admit it, most of us are going to constantly be on this journey of learning ourselves. But if you don't know that difference about yourself and own it, then you will try to tackle that problem like they wanted you to, and that works for them, and it will crush you, right? And potentially for good, right? And then you have to try to figure out, okay, that's not my skill, and this isn't because I'm a failure at, I might be a failure at being a linebacker, but I'm not a failure at this problem. I can still overcome this problem, but I have to own who I am and find other people who can teach me how to be that best version. And sometimes there isn't another mentor who's wired with that same combination in your life. And so you just have to test and fail. How do I be the female feeler, founder, creative, and tackle this really hard problem that other people would handle in a much different way? And how do I do it with confidence, but also humility? It's really challenging because you want the help other people have to give, and it's not always helpful if they are different from you and you don't realize it.
Wow. Such good wisdom. And I think just that growth mindset is such a valuable thing that we all need to learn and embrace, of just always saying, what can I learn from this and how can I get better next time? Right. What do I know more about me this now, and what can I do differently next time?
Right.
So let's transition now to what's happening in life today. And just because we're filming these a little bit in advance and the world is changing so quickly right now, we are recording this at the end of August.
Right.
And so there's a lot going on in the world. And, I'd love to hear what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now that is throwing you into another season where you have the choice to lean in and grow through it, or, all sorts of other less healthy ways, bury your head and hope that it passes, or just give up, or any of the other ways. So what are you facing right now?
Well, right now, there is a lot going on in the world right now, on every level. And I could talk about the tangible, but I'm going to talk just about how it is impacting me personally. All of us are pivoting like tops, I'm even sick of the word pivot. I used to love that word, but I'm tired of it. And I would say my biggest challenge right now is, again, working through the emotions that come with all the uncertainty and pivoting. I will say that I have felt so much stronger than I have in seasons past. And I think the battle and that we faced in 2017, that crisis to overcome, has really helped prepare me for all of this uncertainty. But 3 specific emotions that I think most people can relate to that I'm having to overcome regularly is frustration, grief, and hopelessness. And it looks different, right, in different people, but frustration that we're constantly having to change the plans. Hello, controller and planner in me, like to accommodate all this ongoing uncertainty. Grief, we've all lost things. And I had to recognize early on that grief could tank my creative ability if I didn't give it space. I literally have to give space to my grief every morning. I give myself a couple of minutes to write down something I miss or something that I feel like I've lost, just to give it space. Because if I deny it, it will eventually come up and pull me down, right? If I ignore it. And then hopelessness. As a creative, this is technically like a sense of hopelessness is a natural bent, especially when you're in NEF4, you're drawn towards these like unresolved issues, and you hopefully will bounce off of it with a creative solution. But if you're not careful, it's easy to get sucked into that. And I have to ground myself. It's not easy to have we have no completion to our projects, or to have nothing really to look forward to that for sure is going to stay on the calendar, and I have to ground myself daily in affirmations that remind me that this isn't going to be forever, that really good things can come out of these disruptions. There are really meaningful things happening in the world right now that I want to be a part of, and so continuing to seek out the part that I can play in the history that's being told right now without mission drift away from the students and communities that I am drawn and focused on in our service. Like, how can I engage in the other things happening in the world? So I think it just takes a sense of balance and retaining the practices that will keep you in a place of hope, acknowledging your grief so it can be daily dealt with, instead of letting it build up and letting it sway me off course. And then constantly replacing frustration with a sense of patience and that hope helps a lot with the frustration as well. Like, okay, just need to be patient. This will eventually flush out. I don't think the world will ever be the same, so I'm not going to say it's going to all go back to normal. Like, that's not the hope that I'm placing. The hope that I'm placing it in is that all of this disruption will lead to a new and better future, where all of our organizations will thrive even better than they did before, where we will be stronger and leaner, more values-based, more priorities on what matters, better work-life balance. Like, I have to believe and visualize those things on a daily basis so that I don't get sucked in to some of that frustration, grief, and hopelessness that can burden you.
Yeah. So as you know, we talk about growth in terms of competing values or competing commitments. We have the thing that we're striving for, this, what we call a bigger me value, or the what I want to be true of my life, what I want to be, the story that's told of me at the end. And then we have kind of our status quo self that goes into self-protective mode and says, but change is scary and I'm going to do everything I can to protect myself.
Right.
And so it sounds like the story that you want to tell is that you grew and thrived through this season, and that whatever, I mean, I'm getting to the point that I'm not even going to say when this is over, because I don't know that it's that kind of season, but on the other side of the momentary struggle, you are somebody who has stayed true to your vision, who has been faithful with what's been entrusted to you and to who you are, without giving in to the emotion. Is the emotion the thing that is kind of fighting against you, that in some way this frustration, grief, and hopelessness are in a way self-protective, or is there something else that is in that self-protective space?
That's such a good question. You're definitely right on the aspirational self. I want to be known after this is over as someone who valued what mattered and didn't waver in my certainty or hope that I allowed the disruption to create a better me and a better reality. I think without being held in place by my need for control or my doing repressed self. Because as an idealist, I do repress action. I prefer to live in my idealisms rather than do the hard work sometimes that it takes, to push through. And it is hard work to repress overwhelming despair or grief, or even if it's not overwhelming, that creepy kind that comes along and
for people who
it steals your creativity. It steals it's, for someone like me, it's a fuel, right? So that despair creeps in and it steals your fuel, your ability to go do what needs to be done to stay in a place of growth. I'm looking at a whole whiteboard right now of a whole bunch of things that my visionary creative doesn't want to do to be stronger on the other side of this, but they need to be done, and I have to show up for those things and bring my value system to those things, and not be held in place by the uncertainty. I think too, I think you can relate to this, like, it's easy to charge ahead into an idea when you know you can make it happen. But in this season, I mean, you plan an event, it doesn't happen. You plan a virtual event, nobody shows up. You know, the technology goes out, or a new mandate or a new data comes out, or there's a new sense of unrest, or there's new information that comes your way for how you would normally have presented in process. You're never actually able to just run full steam ahead towards an idea. And that can also be really impairing to a creative leader, because we have this idea and we just want to run after it, but you can't run fast in the season. You have to kind of like keep your stride, because things are changing regularly and it could really throw you over. So caution and walking slowly are not strengths of mine. And so I don't want to be held in place by the fact that I like to barrel ahead or do nothing at all. I have to find that steady rhythm every day of moving forward. Even though it doesn't feel passionate and exciting, I can't let it keep me just sitting. You know, you have to actually get up and get stuff done and move towards the goal, even if it's slow.
So good, Christi. I love how insightful you are to what you're going through right now. And I think it reminds me a little bit of what we were talking about a few minutes ago in terms of what you learned back in 2017 is like the importance of being true to yourself, right? And so even in the season where you've identified these 3 big, heavy emotions, right, there would be some people to say the way that I need to get through being overwhelmed by emotions is to just stuff them and be a more logical person, right? But that would be, again, telling you to be a linebacker, where it's like you have to learn to reconcile this tension within yourself of you feel things deeply, and that is what fuels your creativity and your passion and your vision. And as the executive director, as a wife, as all the other roles you play in life, stuff has to get done. Right. And so learning to figure out what it means, the truer version of you that can be a person who values what's most important and achieves the visions that you have, and has your feelings, and keeps taking steps when it's hard. Right. Sounds so easy, right?
There are so many times that I wish that I fell into the feeling repressed group and I could just push all those feelings aside and get stuff done. But you're right. No, that's part of growth and self-awareness, is learning how your own devices that strengthen you can also be your Achilles heel, and how to manage those so that you can get through you can do hard things.
Yeah. So when you look ahead over the next, let's just keep it short because that's all we can handle, the next 2 months, what is it going to require of you to come out on the other side being the person that you want to be?
I mean, I think for me, it has to do with daily practice. I think it has to do with making sure my mindset's in the right place. I have a very specific rhythm that I started it in January, but it has picked up power over the COVID season of, it's a journaling practice combined with a prayer practice, combined with a little bit of yoga and visualization, things that allow me to get in the right headspace in the morning. I think getting through the season will involve lots of consultation with people who are able to think more logically than myself and help us set really good structures in place. But I would say my number one impediment is getting paralyzed by not being able to see the future and feeling too much about that lack of vision. So I think it's constantly visualizing the future we're trying to walk towards and believing that it can happen. I don't mean visualizing in the hocus pocus sense. I mean, it just really does. When I was in 2017, going through that very difficult time, I mean, we didn't even have a square foot of land, much less a house that 20 kids could live in, right? We had to purchase and buy and put in water and build an international building project with very little expertise that we could afford. And it was significant. And I would regularly sit down in the morning and just imagine our school as it was going to be one day. And of course, being myself, it wasn't super detailed. It had more of this waves of essence the way that you would smell things. So I imagined laughter and bare feet running up and down a big wraparound porch in a home that felt like a home and celebrated who these kids were, and wind chimes and stained glass and music playing between classes, all the things that in its essence represent. I don't know if this will ever be true of Canopy Life, but in its essence, it represents the spirit of what I hope this school will be to transform the lives of these students. And not a shred of that existed, including our staff actually believing that that was something that we were aiming for, right? And so I would wake up and visualize that future as a way of reminding myself that the darkness we were in at that time, the uncertainty, the challenges in decision making was just temporary, right? And so I think it's very similar. It's imagining the future. It's reminding ourselves of the person we want to be when this is over, the community we will have wanted to develop when this is over. However, our organizations have to change in order to become that person in that community. We will change. If you are a restaurant owner and you're wanting to thrive through the season, you're the kind of environment you want to create, the experience you want to create for people, and the people you're trying to give that to. Those are the two most motivational pieces, right? Is depending on whether you approach it as an entrepreneur or as a creative, or both. Yeah. So you just keep that in mind, and you envision that community, you envision that leader that you want to be to help you get over the uncertainty of, is anything that I do today going to be worth it at the end of the day, or is everything going to change and it's going to go away?
I think it's so important right now, right? Because what you're about is not the specifics of what is happening in the Canopy Life building, right? It's not the building, it's not the classroom, it's for you, it's the impact on the lives of your students, and then how they're going to go back and change their communities. Right. And so I think it's so important, and we talk about this a lot at the Lyceum, is just being centered in your values, because you have to pivot in how that's delivered, right? If you've referenced restaurant owners a minute ago, that they have to know, are you about having people in your building, or are you about providing food for people to bond over and have good conversation, right? And so the more we can frame what we are about in terms of values and impact rather than tangibility, I think it allows us to have that shift when we need to, when the world says, no, not only are you going to have challenges building your building in Kenya, but school's just canceled. Right. Send all the kids home. Right. And how do you keep, your kids are back in their villages right now. And how do you continue to love and invest in them, learning at their home, whatever that looks like? And I think when you're able to stay grounded in that mission, it's easier than when it's in the specifics of how it's done, right? The why versus the how.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I have two questions for you as we start to wrap up. The first one is, if you have any words of advice or encouragement to other leaders who are on this journey trying to navigate this crazy world, what would you want to say to them?
I actually had a hard time knowing this question might be coming down the pipe. I have so many I'm going to say, but I'm gonna narrow it down to 5 things, and I'll keep it short. First, I would say, remember your why. So when things get hard, when you're having to pivot, like I talked about earlier, take time to visualize the end goal. Like I said, I would imagine laughter and bare feet and banana trees and wind chimes. I imagined a campus that was thriving, and I still do. Even now I have to. So imagine your end goal. I would say 2, know when and how to stop. I had a hard time knowing when to stop. I compromised my mental health, and it almost cost me the organization, because the number of times I wrote my resignation in my head was uncountable. My problem was that even when I stopped my body, my mind and emotions were still reeling. And about the time they calmed down, if they ever did, it was time to work again. And I have, due to the time zone difference and everything, there was 24/7 access to the people who needed me. I had to be available longer than your normal 8 to 6 or 8 to 7 day. And I didn't know how to stop, how to get away and recharge. I've learned it now, but I would say that's one of the most valuable things you can figure out, is know how and when to stop. But number 3, don't quit. Don't quit. When the campus finally reopened in January of 2019, I remember feeling like it was God alone that had done it. Like the only thing that I had done right was that I hadn't quit. And that alone had almost killed me. I felt like I had been holding on to the back car of a roller coaster, hanging on for dear life. And I couldn't take credit for any of the success of that journey. It felt like the experience had actually beaten me, had won over me. And I had the scars to prove it. But then I realized that perseverance is the only thing that separates those that make it from those. It's the only thing that separates those that make it from those that don't. There's a quote, it's in my little folder of quotes and images by Calvin Coolidge. It says, "Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not, because nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. And education will not, because the world is full of educated derelicts. Perseverance, persistence, and determination alone are omnipotent." And I truly believe that. I think that's literally the only thing that divides the people who make it, is if you don't quit. But that's going to sound in contrast to my number 4, which is know when to quit. And that's a really scary one. But I just want to remind people, like, try with everything in you not to quit, but nothing, no vision, no business, no work is worth your emotional health and your actual life. If you can't figure out how and when to stop, then you have to know when to quit. Because I know leaders who have destroyed their mental health, their belief in others, their relationships, their marriages, because they don't know how to do it healthy. And whether that's delegation or a work-life balance or understanding their strengths, or how their poor decisions have led them to an untenable situation, they're scared it will mean failure or letting other people down, so they don't quit. And you have to realize that even meaningful work isn't meant to last forever and may not succeed. The experience will always leave some good in the world. And even if it's just inside of you, there are lessons you'll learn and you'll do it differently the next time. But burning out and damaging others, sometimes you don't get that back. It's not like you can give 6 or 7 years of your life to a meaningful work that almost kills you, and then you can get that relationship and that time back. The cynicism that can set in, the relationships that can be damaged, sometimes you don't get that back. You never come back to your full self. And so I would just say, if you don't know how to stop, then know when to quit. And then my last thing would just be to learn to forgive. Like, no one is ever going to love your idea the way you do. Sometimes they will even hate your idea and come out in straight opposition to your leadership. Inevitably, that will lead to a lot of people who hurt you intentionally or not. Sometimes it's even perceived. It's not even real hurt, but you perceive it as hurt. And they will never always show up for you the way you hope, because honestly, no one can. Even you can't show up for yourself the way that you would hope. So getting through hard times will require you to forgive daily. The big hurts, but also the dozens of paper cuts that you get every day from people who don't support or show up or understand what you're doing. And you have to forgive yourself, because you will make so many mistakes and hurt people along the way. If you can't learn to forgive, you're not going to be the person you want to be in the end of it all. So yeah, those would be my 5 things. Remember your why, know when and how to stop, don't quit, but know when to quit, and learn to forgive. That would be my advice for anyone.
Man, I need to post that on my wall. So good, Christi. I love it. So to end on a note, instead of what's bogging us down, tell me what is happening in your world right now that you're excited about.
Oh, I've got so much. There's so much innovation and pivots happening, but I would say the 2 things that are exciting me the most right now is that we are having some exciting projects coming for this campus that we're continuing to build and construct. We're trying to help as many students as we can, and we're actively seeking out people to support some of those big projects. I mean, truly life transforming opportunities for children living in poverty. And also we are recruiting the mentors and givers and encouragers who cheerlead our students through the years. So for us, what that looks like is people to sign up to be what we call handpicked. It's kind of a version of a traditional sponsorship program, but instead of a sponsor choosing their child or their student, they sign up, they agree to be a mentor and sponsor, and then we take those photos of all the people who've signed up over to Kenya, and we let our students choose who they're going to partner with for their education. And it is an incredible opportunity for these kids coming out of poverty who have they don't even often get to choose what shirt they're going to wear every day because they only have one or two, and that's choice, right? To restore that kind of dignity and agency and the power of choice to a child in poverty is just so powerful. So yeah, I'm excited about recruiting folks to sign up to be handpicked and be part of a team that's going to encourage and mentor and cheer our students on. Especially, we're trying to get all these folks together because when the school year relaunches in January, which is when the new school year will start in Kenya, we want to focus fully on our programs and on helping these kids heal from some of the mental health issues that will have inevitably developed over the course of a year at home, over the course of being told they have to now repeat. I mean, we have 8th graders who thought they were going to high school, and now they're going to have to repeat 8th grade under country mandate, you know? And so how do we get that team of people together that are going to encourage, cheer on, support, believe in these kids from the first day they're in school? So yeah, I'm really pumped about finding those people and getting folks to sign up to be handpicked as a sponsor for our kids.
I love that. And I love seeing the videos of the kids when they do get to look at all the sponsors' faces and they find that one that like connects with them and the joy. It's so great. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that and sharing that video a lot in September. So by the time this airs, you should be able to easily find it on our social media, on our website. People are welcome to go out.
I love it. I love it. Christi, I'm so proud of you for what that's worth and the work that you do and the faith that you have to keep going when times are hard and the commitment that you have to your vision. I know you get a good year and then you get slammed and then you get a good year and then you get slammed and you've not given up. And I think your story is going to be inspirational to a lot of people. And just to hear such good, vulnerable wisdom from a leader who is a feeler, because there are a lot of us in the world, but we don't tend to be the stories that get told. And so I'm excited that we get to bring a story to the 50 or so % of leaders in the world who relate more to that.
Let your feeling flag fly. You can be a feeler and still be a leader. It's hard and you're not accepted by everyone, but it is worth it to be your authentic self as you pursue your vision. It's worth it. Thank you for the opportunity to share this story because not many people get to hear the story of the feeler. So thank you for creating a platform for that. And thank you for the part you've played in this story, Sarah. I'm like, from the Leaders Lyceum and the training that I received there to our personal relationship and the wisdom that you've poured into it. There's no success that any leader has experienced that is in their own power. And I am the first to admit that. Like I said, I feel like I'm holding onto a roller coaster half the time. It's the people who join the story. It's you're only as strong as your community that is walking through the story with you. And so you're a big part of that. And I'm grateful.
I'm so honored. All right, friend. Thank you for your time. And we will make sure people know how to find you and Canopy Life and all the information if they want to get more involved and get handpicked by one of your sweet students. So
thank you.
Hang in there. It's going to be awesome on the other side.
It is. We're going to be awesome.
All right. Take care.
Sarah, great job. It was fun because I can tell you guys are friends, but it's not amazing.
Yeah. She just has such a great story of perseverance. Like when we go back to the formula for change that we've talked about before, the amount of challenge that she's faced and the amount of perseverance it's taken from her is just out of this world. And it really has, I've walked with her over the last 5 years of this journey, and it really has grown her up in some really awesome ways.
Oh my gosh. I have to tell you, I think the thing that really moved me the most in the interview, and it was significant, is to hear her early stories of challenge and how the frustration and the fear and even the way she talked about the way she was built was like the whole world was coming in on her from the outside in. It was like she was even a victim to her own personality. But at the end of the interview, when you asked her what advice does she have for other people, And she rattled through that list. I've got it written down here, but it's remember your why, know when and how to stop, don't quit, and know when to quit, and learn to forgive. And it's like,
Yeah.
what book did she get that from? Is that not a transition to Inside Out, and such a testament to how challenges that are persevered through can really shape you and shape your understanding and shape your effectiveness? So what was your favorite part of the interview?
Oh, I mean, I love that piece that you just highlighted. But then I think one thing that stood out to me, um, she mentioned kind of in the midst of this season that we're in right now, she said, I want to seek out the part that I can play in the story that's being told now. And you and I think we've maybe even mentioned it here before. We love the question, who do I want to be
Right.
in the midst of this? What story do I want to tell? And it's like, that's just how she's now living of, things are crazy, things are changing. How can I be a part of this? And then the idea that what she's wanting to be a part of is that this disruption in life is not going to then go back to normal. It's how do we then get to a new and better future on the other side of it? So this moving forward, embracing the challenges that we're facing to grow both herself and the organization and the world around us, and not just saying, I just want things to go back to normal, because that is kind of the opposite of persevere. I mean, you have to persevere, but it's not embracing growth in any way. It's like, let me just stick my head in the sand and come out when it's over.
She is so embracing of growth. I mean, that is, my gosh, she just exudes it. And I think that was the most inspirational part of the story to me, is just hearing the way she sees herself and her role right now. And again, it's not, it is, you can see through Christi's voice, you can hear through Christi's voice, I should say, a person who is owning who they are, owning the difference they want to make. And I think that's what you're speaking to.
Yeah. And I think just to be like honest and transparent so our listeners can relate, like these people that we've been interviewing, and I know just because I've walked with Christi through this, they don't embrace change and challenge with like, yippee, like this is so fun, I love it. Like it is hard, right? She has had hard days, but she doesn't give up, right? And I think sometimes I can look at these people that I respect in terms of how they handle challenge, and I think, but it's easy for them. They're different than me. And they're not, right? They're not. She has hard days. Our other guests, the same story can be true, but she just knows that her why, her mission, this idea of really helping change the culture of Kenya is worth it. And she keeps hanging in there.
Yeah.
So I love that.
So Sarah, that's so good. And those who are listening to the podcast, if you want some help figuring out where that point is on your journey, to kind of take a step in the direction of who you want to be and figure out what's holding you in place, and just some insights on how to lean into the challenges, we've got a great tool for you. If you'll go to growinggrownups.com and download the Growth Gap tool PDF and worksheet and work through that, we'd love to have you do that.
Yeah. And a lot of what comes out of that Growth Gap tool, you'll see in Christi's interview once you do the tool of what I want to be about and what's holding me in place. And so it's a great resource to help give you some direction as you're pushing through your challenges, why it matters and why it's holding you back. So check that out. And we're going to have some other great resources to help you on this journey on our website coming soon. So stay tuned.
Yeah, so good. Hey guys, until we get to be with you again, I hope that you will find the challenges in your world and lean in.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Growing as Grown-Ups. Take a second and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes, and tell your friends. You'll find all of the goods related to this episode, including the transcript, videos, links, and other ways we can help you keep growing as a grown-up on our website, growinggrownups.com. Growth isn't easy, but it's completely within your reach. Until next time, journey well, friends.